Talk to Me possesses really good scares, but never great ones. Let me explain. I can't say that this was a consistently scary movie, but it was always an unnerving one. The atmosphere always gives this supposed presence of danger through these massive wide shots of characters or close-ups of them all by themselves, where you can really feel the loneliness and isolation they're experiencing, but because you can't really see the background, whether you're up close with the characters or the backgrounds have these shadows and silhouettes, that there could always be this presence behind them that's about ready to attack. But most of you already know, the main reason to check out this movie is for the seances and possessions. They are really, really fucking good. Even though they have familiar elements like the black eyes, the dead skin,
the truth or dare smiles and voiceovers that we're so used to by this point,
they're executed in a way where it's actually scary. The prosthetics and makeup on everyone is extremely top-notch. The sound design and
voiceovers from everyone
just sent chills down my spine every time they opened their mouths. And the jump scares for once actually feel natural and warranted. Like, take the very first jump scare when someone experiences a ghost for the first time. Okay, now let's try it again when she's done the seances a few times and already knows that ghosts exist. Now, how hard is that to do? And the acting from everyone is really good. Sophie Wilde, especially in her film debut, as the main character, is given the extremely difficult task of getting you to root for someone who is unlikable and does a lot of stupid things, which she does a great job at, partly because it actually takes her a while to become unlikable. For the first 20 minutes or so, when we're setting up who she is as a character, the very few relationships that she has, she shows herself to be responsible, mature, and even a better big sister figure to her best friend's little brother. But even without her saying a word, you can tell that she's repressing a lot of hidden pain stemming from her mother, her best friend, her ex-boyfriend, that once she actually talks to it and becomes hooked on the possibility of communicating with the dead and abuses that by all means, she becomes a lot more self-centered, impulsive, and in denial of the situation, especially when the ghost of a familiar figure may or may not be talking or manipulating her. But when she does make a dumb decision, it never felt forced. You genuinely believe that someone as traumatized as her would make such stupid choices. The closest thing to a big name in this movie is probably Miranda Otto, and honestly, I had no idea she was even Australian, but for the first half of the movie, she was really good and out of the box did some great comic relief as the overprotective mother who just assumes the worst in her family. But when her kids get themselves into trouble and the possessions go way too far, without her even knowing the full extent, all of a sudden her fears and paranoia of what her kids do when she's not around suddenly becomes justified, and she becomes a lot more bitter and depressed and has very few faith in people anymore. Hell, even the bullies get in a couple of good laughs, and they're shown to be capable of actual remorse when their antics go wrong. And I just love how, in my opinion anyways, the angle that the filmmakers approach with the seances and the possessions is kind of a metaphor for drug use and overdose. I mean, the majority of these kids are peer pressured into trying it. Most of them do it to numb out their pain or because it's such a thrill-seeking adventure to them. And like an overdose, if you go too far, the consequences are basically the exact same. Just a lot more torturous and a little bit of eternal damnation while you're at it. Now, for me, the second half wasn't anywhere near as scary as the first, because in the second half they take a lot more time to explain the potential rules and setbacks that come with these seances. There's a lot more exposition on people who have done it in the past, how it became a trend in the first place, and it just seemed unnecessary to explain, and if anything, it kind of took the mystery out of those elements. It does something that I really don't like with horror movies lately, where the first 5 minutes starts off with unrelated characters who either come back halfway through or never again, and I've never understood that trope. For me, it doesn't build up any mystery surrounding what this evil force is, and the style that the first 5 minutes have felt like it was there to be style, not to serve the story. Like, hey, let's film it all in a long take because we can, and the violence in it was more for shock value than the scares in the rest of the movie, which Unfortunately, the most disappointing thing about Talk to Me is the gore. Or lack thereof, because people were building this up as an extremely brutal movie, and it was made by two YouTubers who have been taken down from YouTube for going way too far, but I'll be honest, if you were to tell me that afterwards, I wouldn't have guessed, because while the prosthetics and makeup on everyone, again, is really good, and there are some gory moments, two that really stick out for me. One involving a dead animal on the road that, because it's in Australia, it could be any kind of animal that you want, and I still don't know whether it was CGI or an animatronic / puppet, but it looked really good. And easily the centerpiece of this movie involves a kid with a bloody eye and a broken brick wall. That moment was insane, and I would have loved if there were more moments like that, but for the most part, we don't really get any severed limbs or an extreme amount of blood. We really just get broken bones, bruises, and not much else. There's actually an entire sequence that may or may not take place in hell that would have been an even bigger highlight if it wasn't quick cut to death. And I know that sometimes quick cutting can actually be effective, but for me, I felt like I needed to see what was going on in order to feel scared for the character in that situation. In my opinion, Talk to Me could have went a lot farther than it did, and out of all the scary movies I've seen this year, the ones that I like, this is probably at the bottom of the list, but it doesn't change the fact that it's still yet another good one from A24. The acting's really good, the scares are effective, the metaphors are all there, and even if you don't see the allegories, it's still a lot of fun to watch, and I would highly recommend checking it out. Thanks as always for watching, everybody. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of Talk to Me, and be sure to stay tuned for more reviews.